Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we're going to be talking about human trafficking and what one wonderful nonprofit here in Dallas-Fort Worth is doing to address the situation. That's just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Today we're talking about human trafficking, and a lot of people hear that and they think, well, that's something that happens someplace else. But no, it's happening right here in our backyard. To talk about that today, Alicia Bush, she is the founder of Treasured Vessel Foundation, and Senator Angela Paxton. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Let's start with you, Alicia, because I know you and I met several years ago, and you have a really cool story about how this nonprofit started. Tell that story.
So, my husband and I became aware of human trafficking. He actually went to a men's breakfast years before we started the nonprofit. I left my career to really go on this journey of what was I created to do. And along that journey was discovered, when you start asking the question, when someone is on the news and you read about them and they're recovered from a trafficking situation here in North Texas, where do they go? And as we began asking that question, we came up pretty empty-handed with if they're a runaway and they're a minor, they go to jail because running away is against the law. So, okay, wrap your brain around that, and then you go, okay, well, what about an adult? And it was always kind of this same, well, Alicia, maybe a domestic violence shelter. Maybe they go back home to the place that they ran away from in the first place. Maybe, but nobody was really satisfied with their own answers. And myself as a mother, I wasn't satisfied with that answer, that we really did not have a solution for this specific population. So my husband being a builder, I have a background in healthcare. We just said, okay, then we will fill this gap in care for these very unique individuals that need very specific care. And then we started Treasured Vessels Foundation to really bridge the gap.
Senator Paxton, how did you become involved?
Through Alicia. Although the issue is one that is already important to me, so it was really a natural partnership. We first met, I guess, last year when you were doing your ribbon cutting for Treasured Vessels Foundation in Frisco, Texas. And I met Alicia. I heard her passion for the issue and this really unique role that TVF fills. As Alicia said, I mean, there are so many specific needs. You're talking about predominantly young women who are coming out of an incredibly traumatic situation on every front. And they need help to understand what's happened to them. They need help to understand how to heal, to have their worth as a human being restored. And so, when I saw what they were doing and I saw Alicia's passion for what they were doing, I said, how can I help? And of course, my background, I'm a mom of 4 with 3 daughters. I was a school teacher, a high school math and physics teacher, and a school counselor for over 20 years before I ran for the Texas Senate. But one of the bills I'm most proud to be part of in our last session in 2019 was the Human Trafficking Omnibus Bill. And one of the things about this situation is how do you prosecute, how do you get your arms around the issue when in many ways some of the actions aren't really criminalized at this point. Anyone would look at it and say, that is wrong. But you can't convict someone of a crime. You can't arrest someone for just doing something that we would all say is wrong. There has to be a crime. There has to be a law. And so it's a maturing issue with awareness, but that's how I got involved with Alicia, and I'm excited about what we're going to be able to do together.
Outstanding. Well, we found an amazing video that we want to share with you now.
Kristen was 14 years old the first time she was sold for sex. Raised in a broken and unstable home, she was forced to look for affirmation in dangerous places. Through social media, she began a friendship with Jeremy, and after a few months, met him at a party. Kristen quickly found out Jeremy was not who he said he was. He tricked her, trapped her, and trafficked her. Kristen is no longer a 14-year-old girl longing for affection. She's now a teenager being raped for profit.
Statistics are the only thing that represent these young girls. But every girl has a name and a story and deserves to be represented by someone who cares. Every single one deserves a chance, and every single one deserves hope. Trafficking is the atrocity. Recovery is the answer, and Treasured Vessels Foundation is the avenue.
Such a powerful video. Alicia, staying with you, what are some of the myths? I mean, when you're talking to people for the first time about human trafficking, what are the misconceptions?
I think the fear that our children are going to be at the park and they're going to be snatched up and taken somewhere and chained to a bed and pumped full of drugs and sold. And while that does happen, in our country it's so rare. The hardest part of it is that our kids are going willingly. Young people are going willingly. There's something broken in the home. There's something broken. There's missing in their life that the trafficker builds a friendship, a relationship with them on social media, even at school, just really tapping into what is this child missing? What is this young person missing that I can exploit their vulnerabilities? And then they meet at a party. They go willingly, and it's so hard because by the time they are identified by law enforcement, they are so brainwashed. They are really under the assumption that they made this choice to go. They sent those photos. They're shamed so much so that it's hard for them to even identify themselves as, oh, wow, I am a victim, and what's happening to me is wrong.
Senator Paxton, I know a lot of people say, well, we need more laws, or how do we do this from a law enforcement standpoint? And groups like Alicia's fill a void, right? There's some things that the government can't do.
No, and I mean, you're so right. One of the things that government is in a position to do is to define laws and to respond to the situation that we see, to create a legal system, a legal structure that reflects what we know is happening. I went to the safe house where some of the girls are recovering and being poured into with love and therapeutic resources to help them heal so that they can gain their sense of self back and have a hope and a future. And while I was there, one of the things that one of the young women said was that she was actually trafficked in a halfway house for felons folks who had been released from prison. She was being trafficked in a halfway house.
Wow.
And that's just beyond imagination. It's unconscionable. But one of the things that we find is we just don't have the legal structure around this. And then on the other side, on the government side, really is there's a certain sort of expertise required to really prosecute these well in a way that they will stick. And so I've been very appreciative of the efforts of the Office of the Attorney General and my husband, Kim Paxton, the Attorney General for Texas. Governor Greg Abbott also has a human trafficking unit in his office. Both of those were created in these last terms. And what they're doing is they're developing the specialty of prosecuting these things so that they can make the charges stick. But you're so right. Government does not have the human heart. And hopefully the laws that we pass are motivated by that. I mean, that's my job. My job is to listen, learn, and lead. That's my motto as a state senator. And I want the things that I push for in the legislature to come from real life issues that we need answers for. But it becomes a law, it becomes something that we have to prosecute. And where is it that we deal with in a compassionate way with the victims? And that is where Treasured Vessels Foundation comes in, and other nonprofits that are making the difference and stepping in to do what only human compassion can do.
So tell me, I know Texas is a shining example of a strong economy where a lot of people are suffering around the country and the globe. Does the current recession that we're in impact your work?
Yes. In the fundraising efforts, yes, but also we're seeing an increase of online ads for the demand. So as the demand increases, the supply is increasing. So we are getting more and more applications during this pandemic than we can even be able to serve based on our capacity. So it has been an interesting dynamic, because you would assume with the economy and things, maybe it would decrease, but we're seeing the online uptick because of children being online and having and people, the buyers, the Johns, having access to more and more young people. So it has been devastating on fundraising efforts as far as not being able to hold events and just the practicals. So we've all gotten pretty creative.
Sure.
As our goal is to expand our services, not only across the what we're doing now, but across the state and across the nation eventually.
We've got a couple of pictures we want to share with the audience. The first picture, I think, is of your lovely family, Alicia. I don't think this is a recent picture, right? They've grown a little bit since then?
They have.
Tell me who we're looking at.
So that is my youngest. He's a surprise. 6. His name is Boston, and then 11-year-old Britton, and then a 13-year-old. Now I have a teenager, Olivia, and my husband and best friend, Brandon.
Oh, that's cool. And that was taken at a fundraiser?
It was one of our very first. We called it Sticks and Bricks. It was kind of our coming out in Dallas as a nonprofit event. And it was so interesting because in that time, I think I'm fundraising but you're fundraising for a problem no one even knew we had, for a solution no one even knew that we needed. So to see that many people turn out and say, I want to find out what this issue is, and the curiosity of it, and then the really passion and support of the community has just been really overwhelming on so many levels.
Yes. Senator Paxton, we'll give you the final word. Why should people listen to this? Why should people care? I mean, a lot of people, I think, sit at home and they watch and they say, well, that doesn't impact me. That doesn't impact my family. Why should they care?
Well, you look at something like this, and the video that Treasured Vessels Foundation that we watched earlier has put together is just so beautifully done in communicating the urgency of this. The state of Texas, we're first in a lot of great ways, but one of the ways we don't like being first is being at the top of the list in human trafficking. We know that in the state of Texas, every day there are over 300,000 people being trafficked, and that would include sex trafficking, but also there are many other types of trafficking where people are being forced into a type of servitude, really against their will, and they're being exploited. So, Houston as a port city is one of the worst cities in the nation, And we don't want to lead there. What we want to lead in is making a difference and turning the tide. And so the reason that we all need to be involved in this is because many of the folks that are rescued out, oftentimes it is because someone just saw something that didn't add up. I'm sure many people have been at gas stations like Buc-ee's or something like that, and you see signs in the bathrooms, and it's like, if you need help, call this number if you're being trafficked or whatever. But it's very true that in some cases it's just been a neighbor. This is happening in neighborhoods. There was a story I heard about where there was a woman that she just brought the trash out on Wednesdays, and a neighbor on the cul-de-sac started over time noticing, who is that? And finally asked her one morning when she went out and took the trash out at the same time, and she said, "Do you need help?" And she said, "Please help me." This woman had been trafficked. She was being kept against her will in this home in a suburban neighborhood. Wow. And so everyone really needs to be on the lookout, because you can help. There's a great video that was put together by the Office of the Attorney General called Be the One. I'd encourage everyone to go online and watch that. It starts with awareness. The change starts with awareness. But we live in an area that many times we don't think it could happen here, but it's happening right under our noses. Wherever there are professional sports, we know that is a magnet for incidences of human trafficking and sex trafficking. And so, we live in an amazing place in Texas. It's a great state. This is a great part of Texas to live in. But at the same time, there are always people looking for ways to make money, to use other people, and we don't want it happening here. And so I would really implore everyone to find a way to get involved. We have a luncheon coming up and next week, and I guess that might be a good segue for that, but I'll be part of that. I'm speaking at the luncheon.
Perfect.
And we're going to be raising some money to help these young women get the life that they deserve.
And is there still time to get a reservation at the luncheon?
There is, I think, unless I talk to the staff right now. We actually ended up expanding our guest list.
Cool.
We were in overflow. So,
wow, that's wonderful.
Which if you can't get a ticket, then we'll just do another event. You
there
in?
You go.
I'm in. I am all in. I am all in.
I love it. This has been a great segment, and thank you for all the work that you guys are doing in the community. I appreciate that. We're going to end with the website so everybody can get in touch. TreasuredVesselsFoundation.org is the website. Alicia Bush and Senator Paxton, thank you so much for sharing your kindness and your servant heart.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.